I am a dragon with a strong possessive streak. My name is Sincere Drake. Father gave me this name hoping I would grow up big and strong, but things didn't go as planned. Even on the day I came of age, I was still only the size of one of his claws. But my dragon dad told me that every dragon, upon reaching adulthood, must find a princess more beautiful than any jewel and snatch her back to their cave. Confused, I asked, "Snatch her back for what?" Father replied sternly, "Snatch her back to the cave and imprison her. Every dragon must capture a princess. It's tradition. Then why, apart from Mother, have I hardly seen any princesses growing up?" My dragon dad remained stern. "Because when we battle the knights who come to rescue the princess, we are bound to lose. That is also tradition. So, my slacker mom kindly reminded me, you'd best find a princess with severe social anxiety." "Social anxiety?" "Yes, social anxiety. That way, she'll be quite happy to be imprisoned by you." "And she probably won't know any knights," slacker mom said, stretching languidly. I still didn't understand. How could a little dragon like me possibly capture a princess? But since it was tradition, as a dragon, I had to obey. Beneath an oak tree in Sunset Forest lived a vastly knowledgeable goblin named Gimble Cogsworth. Not even a leaf falling from the easternmost tree in the world escaped his notice. For the price of a small jar of honey, you could learn anything you wanted to know. I took a jar of honey to find Gimble. After all, there were 43,700 countries in the world, each with at least one princess, and those of marriageable age possessed rare beauty. But before reaching adulthood, I hadn't ventured more than 100 miles from my cave. I didn't know where this princess more beautiful than jewels could be found. Gimble hugged the honey jar, scooping out honey with his hand. He looked me over and drawled, "You mean you are going to imprison a princess?" I felt he was doubting that such a tiny dragon like me could capture a princess. Embarrassed, I straightened my back and tried to sound serious. "Yes. My father said it's dragon tradition. So, can you tell me where the princess more beautiful than any jewel is?" "Tradition, eh?" Gimble nodded as if in sudden understanding, quickly licking the honey off his fingers. His fingers slid across a map. "Tradition must certainly be upheld. Let me see. Where is a princess more beautiful than any jewel?" I watched him curiously, noticing countless images flashing rapidly in his eyes. "A princess more beautiful than jewels. Found her follow the river Brine west. Encounter a forest sprawling over 3 mountains, then turn left. You'll reach Thorn Manor. A very, very old vampire lives there. If you want to pass through safely, best pay a small toll. Then continue east, cross 3,300 mountains and 440 rivers, and you'll arrive at the Duchy of Isgard. Their princess has skin as white as snow and hair as black as ebony. Her blue eyes are clearer and more brilliant than the purest sapphires in the world. She's a beauty unmatched in a century, 1,000 times more beautiful than other princesses. Princes from many nations secretly adore her." I asked Gimble, "So, does she have social anxiety?" I paused. "Never mind, I'll go see for myself." Gimble stored the honey in his cupboard. I noticed many jars identical to the one I'd given him. He said, of course, little sincere. "One jar of honey only buys one question. That's goblin tradition. I've lived here many years. Your grandfather, your father, every dragon who came asking about their princess with a jar of honey went to learn about her themselves." I pouted helplessly. "All right. Since it's tradition, and my dragon dad apparently did the same, I suppose I must obey it." Gimble waved goodbye with a smile. I tilted my head, thinking he seemed as kind as my dragon grandfather might have been. Moved, I nodded, spread my wings, and flew west along the river Breen, my white scales shimmering in the sunlight. In the royal palace of the Duchy of Isgard stood a clock tower, said to be the tallest structure in the duchy, offering a view of the entire land from its top. Maria roses, which had grown since the founding of Isgard, twined around the tower's outer walls, their delicate blooms reaching into the attic window. I flapped my wings and landed on the clock tower roof. It was said the princess had angered her father, the king, and had been imprisoned in this attic for a year. I solemnly lowered my head. As a dragon, my neck was very long, long enough to reach down into the attic window from above. It was late at night and the room was pitch black. I couldn't see anything. Should I go in? A question worth pondering, certainly. But for a dragon, the answer was obvious. A dragon must act like a dragon. I shifted into my human form, swung myself through the window, and landed inside the room. I felt my way along the wall. My fingers touched exquisite porcelain crafted by the greatest artisan of the Philocene era. Curtains made of luxurious silk imported from the distant East exclusively for the upper nobility, and, arranged neatly on the dressing table, jewelry left by the most famous Queen Mary of the last century. There was a bronze mirror in the room. I looked at myself in it and sighed in dismay. Sure enough, even in human form, I was still small, looking like a child. In another corner of the world, the cave dragon Dad had arranged for Slacker Mom was also filled with such treasures. Except, I rubbed my fingers together, Slacker Mom's jewelry wasn't covered in dust like this princess's. Dragon Dad always kept them polished clean. And as I was thinking, a voice suddenly sounded beside my ear. "Good evening, cute little fellow. Are you looking for something? Perhaps I can help you find it?" "Ah, good evening," I replied instinctively, still thinking the voice sounded like a young lady's. "Thank you for your concern, but I'll look for it myself first." Then something clicked. My body froze instinctively. At that exact moment, candlelight flickered to life in the room. It was close by the last bit of candle on the stand beside the dressing table. I looked up. A beauty in a white nightgown lowered her head, carelessly pinching out the matchstick in her palm. She then looked up at me, smiling. "I think it's better to be clear, don't you agree, kiddo?" Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I stared at her face, stunned, realizing this was the princess, more dazzlingly beautiful than any jewel, whom I was supposed to snatch back to my cave. Blood slowly dripped from my nose. The princess's smile froze. Her mouth twitched. She reached out, picked me up, and roughly yanked up the hem of her nightgown to wipe my nose. I shook my head angrily. "I am a dragon," I threatened her fiercely. "I've come today to snatch you away." Princess Victoria casually pulled over a nearby chair and sat down, looking down at me. She raised an eyebrow. "A dragon? Snatching me away? Do you know where you are?" I looked at her, puzzled, shaking my small head uncertainly. She looked at me and explained with a sigh. "This is the Duchy of Isgard, the bane of dragonkind, the birthplace of the Dragon Knights. The first sword humanity forged against dragons, created by the great Queen Willow, originated here. You're not safe here, little one." I nodded seriously but continued nonchalantly. "My father said that on the day every dragon comes of age, they must snatch a princess more beautiful than any jewel back to their cave. It's dragon tradition. So, will you come with me?" I counted on my fingers, earnestly negotiating with her. "I'll decorate my cave beautifully for you. Whatever you have in this room, I have. Whatever you don't have, I also have. It's all yours. You've lived here all this time, never seeing the outside world. There's Gimbal in Sunset Forest. Nothing in the world escapes his notice. I'll take you to his place to hear gossip and the rainbows in the sky, the red pearls under the sea. I'll show you everything, one by one." Princess Victoria sat on the chair, legs crossed, looking at me with regal coolness. Suddenly she laughed, a dazzling smile that was utterly captivating. "All right," she said. "When do we leave?" I stared blankly at her smiling face. Blood slowly dripped from my nose again. Princess Victoria frowned, looking exasperated. I hopped off the bed, lifted the hem of her nightgown, and silently began wiping my nose. Princess Victoria sighed, took out a handkerchief, and carefully wiped the bloodstains I'd smeared on my cheek. I looked up into her earnest blue eyes. My heart felt like it had sunk a little, stirring softly. Day 1 in Dragon Valley, I gave the princess a tour of my cave. "What's that?" Princess Victoria asked. pointing to the luminous pearl on the ceiling. A night pearl. For light at night, I explained, looking at her. No dragons in Dragon Valley use candles. And that? She gestured towards a large, smooth-surfaced ruby inside the cave. That's a bed. For sleeping, I said, looking at the single dragon-sized ruby. It's for one. I'll find a double-sized one later. No need, said Princess Victoria. I replied earnestly, but I'll crush you. Princess Victoria looked at me tolerantly. I mean, it's big enough for me alone. All right, I nodded. Then I'll find you a cushion. Day 2, I took the princess to visit Dragon Dad and Slacker Mom's cave. Dragon Dad looked at the princess I brought back. Her armor gleamed even in the cave, the helmet intricately carved with dragon motifs, cheek guards extending to her chin, covering half her face, revealing only sharp eyes. Her breastplate was sturdy and thick, embedded with a gem that pulsed with mysterious light. Then he looked at me, beaming happily beside her, barely reaching her shoulder. His usually stern expression cracked, showing a hint of a father's worry. This is troubling, he murmured to Slacker Mom. Slacker Mom, starry-eyed, gazed at the princess more beautiful than any jewel, ignoring Dragon Dad's paternal angst. Oh, really? You're right, she agreed absently. Dragon Dad's face practically turned green. He threw both the princess and me out of their cave. Princess Victoria tilted her head to look at me. We stood in silence. Day 3. I took a jar of honey and the princess to visit the knowledgeable Gimbal. Princess Victoria attempted to divide the jar of honey into 30 spoonfuls to trade for 30 pieces of the most scandalous Isgard royal gossip. An exasperated Gimbal threw us out of his house. From afar, Gimbal hugged his honey jar and yelled at me, "Sincere Drake, control your princess one more time and I won't answer any more of your questions." Oh dear, what now? Princess Victoria looked at me playfully. I looked at her, thought for a moment, and said, "I'll take you to see a rainbow." It doesn't matter, I thought. I found my princess anyway. Day 4, I took the princess to visit my Aunt Agnes. Aunt Agnes lived in a towering mushroom on the border between Sunset Forest and the Mushroom Kingdom. She was the only dragon living near Dragon Valley who didn't reside in a cave. She lived there for the sake of Uncle Simon Mysel's health. I remembered what Aunt Agnes told me when she moved. The caves in Dragon Valley are too dry for Simon, but the humidity of the Mushroom Kingdom is fine for me. Her face glowed with the sweetness of love. When you love someone, you want them to be comfortable, even more comfortable. Making a small sacrifice for that is nothing. Aunt Agnes was the best cook in the entire world. Before lunch, I assured the princess she'd never tasted food this delicious anywhere else, not even from the best imperial chef in the mysterious Eastern culinary dynasty. Princess Victoria gave me a look full of affection and patted my head. I belatedly covered the spot she'd touched, my face burning, my eyes dazed. During lunch, I watched in astonishment as the princess ate with swift elegance. I secretly resolved to learn cooking from Aunt Agnes. Afterwards, the princess elegantly wiped her mouth with a napkin, sat up straight, and asked Aunt Agnes, "What do you think this giant mushroom would taste like if cooked?" She meant the mushroom Aunt Agnes lived in. Uncle Simon's face instantly turned deathly pale. Aunt Agnes's smile froze. I dropped my cutlery, grabbed the princess, and we bolted. Day 5. At 4 in the morning, I dragged the blanket-wrapped princess up the tallest hackberry tree in Sunset Forest. We sat on the highest branch. Below us, clouds surged like a sea, a vast expanse of white. At the edge, the sun began to rise, glorious and radiant. The princess wasn't fully awake yet. Wrapped in her blanket, she stared blankly at the rising sun. "Why did you bring me here?" I watched the sun too, blinking softly. When I was very young, Gimbal told me this tree is the tallest in the world, the closest place to the sun. Besides dragons and Zephyr, the west wind, no one else can reach here. Later Zephyr became busy, and the other dragons stopped coming. I was telling her about my past, about the lonely times in my childhood when I couldn't shift forms and was isolated by others. It all unfolded here. Thinking back now, it wasn't a big deal, rather uninteresting to talk about. But I just wanted her to know. I understand, Princess Victoria said. After a moment, she slowly unfolded the blanket and wrapped me inside it too. Day 6, at midnight, lying on my pallet beside the ruby bed, I fell into severe anxiety. I had already taken the princess to all the places I frequented and the sights I loved before I came of age. Now, racking my brains, I couldn't think of anywhere else to take her. I hugged my blanket and rolled around on the pallet in despair. I just realized I'm such a boring dragon, moreover. I calmed down, staring grimly at the night pearl on the ceiling. Dragon Dad told me that within 10 days of a dragon snatching a princess, the rescuing knight is certain to come and duel the dragon. And according to dragon tradition, I must lose to the knight, regardless of whether I wanted the princess to leave my cave or not. I wanted to keep Princess Victoria, but I didn't even know if she had social anxiety. The princess seemed to be asleep. I got up, crawled onto the ruby bed cushioned with 10 layers of velvet, and stared at her peaceful, beautiful sleeping face, sighing heavily. Princess Victoria's eyelids twitched uncontrollably. She seems to be awake. I tilted my head, carefully observing her trembling eyelids. Tentatively, I let out a long sigh and whispered, "Your Highness." Her eyelids began to tremble violently. I reached out a finger and started poking her cheek. Princess Victoria sat up, pressing her forehead. Watching her, I felt her soul sighing. She looked down at me, exasperated, her voice low and husky, ending on a rising note. "What is it now?" I looked up at her and suddenly felt a little sad. "I don't even know if you have social anxiety." The princess clearly didn't understand why her having social anxiety or not was cause for such distress. But she sighed, reached out, wrapped me in the blanket, pulled me into her arms and lay back down. She patted my back, sleepily coaxing, "What difference does it make if I have social anxiety?" I felt like she was treating me like a child, but I was an adult now. Even if I looked small, I was a dragon. A dragon must act like a dragon, an adult dragon even more so. Definitely not to be coddled like a child. So, I struggled out of her embrace, sat up, and explained seriously, within 10 days of a princess being snatched, a knight will definitely come to the dragon's cave to rescue her. Princess Victoria propped her head up, resting her eyes, and interrupted carelessly, "10 days? The journey from Isgard to Dragon Valley takes much longer than 10 days. That knight must be quite something. Does he fly?" I held her hand, which lay outside the blanket. Thinking about it, she had a point. But I still told her earnestly, this is knowledge passed down through generations of dragons. My father told me. According to dragon tradition, when a dragon fights a knight, they must lose. I squeezed her fingers. My mother said, "If you have social anxiety, then I wouldn't have to duel the knight, and you'd be happy being imprisoned by me." So, do you have social anxiety? Princess Victoria let me hold her hand, eyes closed, saying nothing. I lay my head on the pillow, looking at her, feeling sleepy. My voice grew soft. "I don't want to duel a knight at all. Whether I win or lose, I'd have to let you go. But I don't want you to go. It would be better if they just didn't come." Princess Victoria opened her eyes and looked at me with an unreadable expression as I spoke. She reached out and patted my head. Her touch felt comforting. I was so sleepy my eyelids barely stayed open. I mumbled, "To be honest, I've never been a particularly good dragon. I don't really feel possessive about anything. Been like that since I was small. You're the first person I've wanted to keep so much. But I'm afraid you won't be happy staying here." I tugged at the lace on the front of her nightgown, feeling sad. "When you were in Isgard, you lived in such a big room with so many servants. All I have is a damp cave, a rather grumpy father, and a mother who doesn't manage much. And I told you I'd show you rainbows and sea pearls. But now I don't know where else to take you." The hand on my head moved to the back of my neck. She closed her eyes and said, "While I don't have social anxiety, I promise you no knight will come looking for a duel. Is that okay? Don't be sad. Sleep now." She held me tightly and whispered, "Good night, Sincere." Drowsily, I buried my face deeper into her softness and closed my eyes. I believed her promise. But what I didn't expect it wasn't that nights wouldn't come for me. It was that Princess Victoria herself would leave. When Zephyr, the west wind, passed through Dragon Valley, she told me she came from the Duchy of Isgard. The king there was gravely ill. The country, lacking in air, had fallen into civil war, and the people were suffering terribly. I wasn't in the cave when Zephyr came to see me. Ever since the 6th day after the princess arrived in Dragon Valley, I stopped staying in the cave during her afternoon naps. All the people I'd met and stories I'd heard told me, princesses live in castles, dragons dwell on high mountains. Whether my princess was delicate or not, a cave in Dragon Valley couldn't be considered a comfortable dwelling for a human. Even Dragon Dad and Slacker Mom only stayed in their cave during summer to escape the heat, so I had to plan for the princess's first winter in Dragon Valley. I had a great idea: build the most beautiful and comfortable castle in the world for her. Use the finest, prettiest marble from the largest quarry in the northern continent for the walls. Plaster them with the smoothest volcanic mud, washed by lava for 30,000 years beneath a volcano. Treasures unobtainable even by the most esteemed emperors would fill every corner. The vast garden would bloom with Maria roses. I chose the location for the castle by Crystal Lake, on the border of Dragon Valley and Sunset Forest. In winter, one could see extraordinary ice crystals here, said to be the work of shy ice sprites. And in the coldest month of December, the surface of Crystal Lake would freeze into a layer of ice 2 meters thick overnight. Elves and animals living nearby would gather that day to skate and trade. Then, the princess and I could also help the little animals that hadn't stored enough food. When Zephyr arrived, the castle's foundation had just been laid. Hearing her news, I felt instinctively uneasy. At the same time, I thought, I must tell the princess, as soon as possible. I spread my wings and flew back. I couldn't imagine how the princess would react to this news. That was her country, whether she lived in a luxurious castle or a clock tower attic. When I snatched her, it was the place where she grew up. I even wondered, if I hadn't brought her here, would Isgard have fallen into such disaster? What would she think? I landed before the cave, retracted my wings, shifted to human form, and rushed inside. "Princess Victoria," I said, "Isgard is in—" I looked at the empty cave, stunned. The princess wasn't inside, but she never went out without me. I looked around, my heart gradually calming. I walked out of the cave and extended my hand towards Miss Hazelnut, the neighbor squirrel, who was perched on the oak tree by the entrance, nibbling an acorn. "Hi, lovely Miss Hazelnut. Do you happen to know where the beautiful princess who lived in this cave went?" Oh, dear, sincere Miss Hazelnut leaped onto my hand, acorn still clutched, tilting her head. "Who wouldn't notice the princess more beautiful than any jewel? Ever since you brought her to your cave, we've all been charmed by her loveliness. As for where she went, let me recall. Sincere Miss Hazelnut jumped up. Starting from when you stopped staying in the cave at midday, a troop of people in armor on horseback came to your cave every day. That beautiful princess gave them orders, just like an excellent queen. This afternoon, when that troop of knights left your cave, there was a female knight in armor among them. This knight led her army out of Dragon Valley. I placed Miss Hazelnut back on the oak tree, gave her 2 more acorns, and then heard myself say, 'All right. Thank you for telling me, dear Miss Hazelnut. Enjoy your meal.' Miss Hazelnut held her acorns, watching me with concern from the oak tree. I smiled at her, then turned and walked towards Crystal Lake. My castle isn't finished yet, I thought. Walking along, I remembered the beginning of a fairy tale Slacker Mom used to tell me to lull me to sleep. Dragons are born on high mountains, princesses live in castles. I rubbed my eyes, thinking sadly, I actually thought that could change. Dragons are born on high mountains, princesses live in castles. I crouched by Crystal Lake for a long time. Finally, I consoled myself, maybe this wasn't so bad. See, I did snatch the princess. Although this princess turned out to be a knight, the dragon tradition was fulfilled. My coming-of-age ceremony was successful. The initial goal was achieved, nothing to complain about. Though unwilling to admit it, I was the weakest dragon in Dragon Valley. Slacker Mom was very worried I'd get hurt fighting a knight. If no knight comes to rescue the princess, then there's no need to fight, Slacker Mom had said. And as for the princess and me, apart from her leaving without saying goodbye, we were now back in our respective places, separate paths. Perhaps it counted as parting amicably. Since she chose to leave, since her country was in trouble, naturally she had to go, even though I didn't want her to leave, even though I never went back to my cave after that. I composed myself, deciding to finish building my castle. After all, life goes on. Dragons want to live in castles in winter too. At night, I went back to sleep in Dragon Dad and Slacker Mom's cave. Just as the castle walls were nearly finished, Zephyr told me that a magnificent, handsome dragon knight leading her army had finally reached the Duchy of Isgard. Zephyr's work route this season was between Isgard and Dragon Valley. She was accustomed to telling me the amazing news she encountered during her work. I kept my lips pressed together, not speaking, carefully lifting the last piece of marble, measuring it to fill the final gap in the castle wall. I took out a handkerchief and wiped away the mud I'd accidentally smeared on my cheek. I don't care, I thought, but after a long while I couldn't help thinking, see? If the princess had waited for me to return before leaving, she wouldn't have traveled so slowly. I was planning to escort her back anyway. Tears streamed down my round face. Still sad. Heartbroken by the princess's deception and departure without a word. I kept busy around the castle day after day. Zephyr returned from Isgard every few days, chattering like a hen about to lay an egg, reporting the news from there, her mouth never stopping. Her squawking reminded me of the time I accidentally stumbled into a chicken coop. That princess, claiming the identity of a long-lost royal orphan, joined the struggle for the throne. Her army fights bravely. Her mercy towards the citizens is moving. That princess won another battle. People in Isgard say she commands the finest military strategy. That princess was ambushed. She was injured, but still won the victory. Was she badly hurt? Not serious, I think. Or just a minor injury, nothing to worry about. Days passed amidst Zephyr's chatter. My days were busy. The proud, beautiful, yet gentle princess in my memory gradually merged with the image of the brilliant, decisive dragon knight described by Zephyr. With a mix of calm and sadness, I thought, actually, the princess I knew was still far from the real her. By the time my castle was completely finished, autumn was almost over. My garden was still bare. I sat in the courtyard, afternoon tea prepared, waiting for Zephyr. This was her last visit here this year. I had asked her to bring me some Maria rose seeds from Isgard. The Maria roses there bloomed most beautifully. Hey, Sincere, you'll never guess what earth-shattering, incredible, explosive news I have for you. Zephyr handed me the seeds, bubbling with excitement. The princess won the final victory. She's ascended the throne. Now she's the great Queen Misty, who resolved the civil war at the coronation ceremony. Minister Frey Bancroft tried to marry her to his son because his son is the bravest dragon knight in the duchy, absolutely capable of being an excellent royal consort. And then, guess what? Listening to Zephyr, I reached for the packet of rose seeds to put on the table. Hearing the end, my heart ached. The seeds slipped from my hand and fell to the ground. I stared blankly at the seeds on the ground, feeling lost. A thought suddenly surfaced. So the princess's name is Misty. Then, belatedly, she's getting married. Zephyr hadn't noticed my reaction. She was naturally boisterous, and besides, she didn't know about my history with the princess. After all, who would imagine that the dashing dragon knight of today was once a princess more beautiful than any jewel? She quickly bent down, picked up the seeds, and continued. Queen Misty sternly refused the minister's request. Zephyr adjusted her chair, mimicking the scene. Queen Misty just sat there on her throne, slowly and methodically adjusting her gloves, and said slowly but majestically, "I'm afraid that won't be possible, Minister Bancroft." Then, as if remembering someone, she smiled helplessly, her voice softening. I already have a royal consort. Once the country is stable, I will go fetch him." Zephyr's eyes sparkled. Queen Misty was her 341st idol. Well, wasn't that cool? So she refused. But who is her consort? It definitely wasn't me, I thought, turning away expressionlessly. Then I looked back at Zephyr, giving a thumbs up in agreement. Yeah, very cool. Zephyr finished her tea and left. Her work location this season was far away, requiring an early departure. I saw her off, then sat in the courtyard, lost in melancholy. Although Slacker Mom taught me since childhood to handle emotional matters amicably, not forcing things, being carefree and at ease is the mark of true strength. According to Dragon Instinct, accepting this fact might take a very, very long time. Victoria's perspective. The coronation ceremony ended. Misty returned to her chambers, exhausted. She unbuttoned her ceremonial gown, draped the outer layer over a screen, and irritably pulled off her gloves. Thinking of Minister Bancroft's actions during the ceremony, she snorted coldly, stubbornly persistent. Misty's successful ascension to the throne was actually the result of a three-way power struggle. She had suppressed the rebel army with military force, forcing the conservative faction to yield, but peace was clearly not yet secured. Misty still had a long, smokeless battle ahead. The conservative faction, led by Frey Bancroft, inherited the old king's hostile attitude towards Misty and wasn't pleased with her succession. They clearly favored the old king's illegitimate son, Ethan Malcor, a good-for-nothing, interested only in pleasure, easier to control than Misty. Furthermore, some generals and soldiers recruited from the rebel army still harbored dissent. Misty collapsed onto the bed, eyes half closed, murmuring softly, "So troublesome. Need to speed things up. I want to go get my little dragon fellow soon." Thinking of Sincere, far away in Dragon Valley, Misty buried her face in the quilt, unable to stop a grin from spreading. She touched the silk sheets on the bed, feeling a bit disdainful, missing the velvet cushions in the Dragon Valley cave. She recalled the day she left. That day, when the night squadron arrived at Dragon Valley according to Misty's orders, it was precisely the day after Sincere couldn't sleep due to anxiety about the nights. To be precise, it was during the afternoon nap the next day. Sincere had secretly crept off to Crystal Lake. Victoria Ashworth couldn't find him. She searched the cave, bewildered, then, face darkening, took a jar of honey to ask Gimbal. Passing Crystal Lake, she discovered the dragon crouching on the ground, poking and digging here and there, muttering to himself, holding a piece of parchment with a crookedly drawn castle. Misty crouched behind a tree, listened for a while, then, satisfied, carried the honey back. Then, at the cave entrance, stood a grim line of figures in black armor, stiff as iron wires. The princess's face went numb. Only then did she remember leaving a coded message for her night squadron when the dragon snatched her, indicating they should follow the trail to Dragon Valley. Knight Commander Sterling puffed out his chest proudly, declaring in a resonant voice, "Report, Commander under my command. The journey of nearly 10+ days was completed in only 6 days furthermore. There were 0 casualties. Report complete." After speaking, he clicked his left heel against his right, stood at attention, and waited with the most standard military salute for his commander's next instruction. His eyes shone brightly as he looked at his commander, thinking, "Such an outstanding achievement deserves praise. Her Majesty will surely commend me. What reward should I ask for?" But Commander Victoria paid no attention to the knight's internal monologue. She just thought numbly, "So it really is possible to reach Dragon Valley from Isgard within 10 days. Sincere's worry wasn't unfounded. The experience of the dragon race is truly remarkable. Thinking of Sincere's severe anxiety about knights, she shook her head helplessly. Sincere would have a breakdown if he saw so many dragon knights. Just the thought of one imaginary knight kept him awake. Therefore, she ordered them to find a secluded, safe place to set up camp, rest for a period, conceal their movements, and avoid being easily discovered. Knight Commander Sterling, upon hearing this, was momentarily stunned. Why didn't Her Majesty praise me? But then, Her Majesty must have a profound reason for doing this. She must want to train me. The Knight Commander's blood boiled with determination. His expression grew serious. I will definitely not fail Her Majesty's painstaking efforts. Please don't be disappointed in me, Your Majesty. He commanded the Knight Squadron towards the depths of the forest, giving Misty a look that said, I will continue to strive, and so the Knight Squadron and Sincere coexisted harmoniously, appearing at alternating times, each unaware of the other's presence. Until civil war erupted in Isgard, Misty had always maintained contact with Isgard. The elite Dragon Knight Order secretly under her command had been monitoring Ethan's faction. Misty had long suspected Ethan harbored ill intentions towards the old king, but she hadn't expected him to resort to such a ruthless method. Nor had she anticipated the populace being swayed by enemy spies into rebellion. The entire nation swiftly plunged into dire straits. By the time news reached Dragon Valley, Isgard was on the verge of collapse. The situation was critical. There was no time to inform Sincere, who was building the castle at Crystal Lake. Frowning, Misty left him a note, explaining where she was going and when she would return, telling Sincere not to worry, just wait for her to come back and fetch him. She placed the note under something on the table in the cave. Misty mounted her horse and led her knights towards her country. The warriors' blood surged, their hearts tumultuous with outrage over their homeland's plight. As Misty rode hard, she thought ironically, this is the beloved son the old king painstakingly tried to place on the throne. To seize his father's crown, he orchestrated a murder. Such fatherly love and filial piety. The old king's illegitimate son, Ethan Malcor, was the child of his true love, his mistress. The king who ascended the throne young was weak-willed, a mediocre ruler, but fiercely devoted in love, a rare romantic in the Isgard royal line. For the mistress he fell for at first sight, the harem remained empty. It wasn't until he was 32, during a period of internal strife in Isgard, that he was forced to marry a neighboring princess for support. He married the queen. That same year, the mistress, overcome with grief, gave birth prematurely to a boy and died from hemorrhaging. The king was devastated. He brought the illegitimate son to the palace, raising him personally with the status of an heir, showering him with affection. From then on, he treated the queen with cold indifference. The year after the mistress died, the queen gave birth to a girl. When the little princess was less than a year old, the queen hanged herself in the clock tower. Since then, Princess Victoria was raised by the Queen's Lady-in-Waiting, secretly taught swordsmanship and horsemanship by the captain of the elite Dragon Knight Guard, and no longer appeared before the public. Like the winter that never seemed to touch Isgard, she became a distant, beautiful legend. Sincere's perspective resumes, winter passed. The ice on Crystal Lake began to melt. When the ice flowers bloomed, I dug up the soil in the garden, which had been covered by snow all winter, and planted the rose seeds. After planting, I leaned on my shovel in the garden, looking contentedly at the bare patch of earth before me. It was still barren for now, but by summer it would be full of Maria Rose's lush leaves, twining vines. My gaze lowered. The early spring sunlight shone on my white dragon scales. Since completing my task and the princess's departure, I had grown rapidly, already possessing the physique of a young adult dragon. Perhaps this is the price of growing up, I thought. I hope these flowers grow too. Like the gardens in the royal palace of Isgard, I had never seen Maria Roses bloom better anywhere else. Victoria's perspective. Inside the Isgard royal palace, candlelight flickered. Misty was in her study, dealing with memorials. A report from the spy planted near Ethan stated that Ethan had contacted the fugitive rebel leader, planning to coordinate from within and without, taking advantage of the new queen's unstable foundation to launch another coup. Misty raised an eyebrow, a knowing smile appearing. The coup was set for the Festival of Flora in mid-February. At that time, with bells ringing, crowds cheering, and palace defenses relaxed, it was indeed an opportune moment for trouble. Misty took out a sheet of paper, wrote down the news of Ethan Malcor's planned coup, and instructed the Knight Commander that arrangements for the Festival of Flora should proceed as usual, but surveillance on the conservative ministers and rebel generals must be tightened. Palace defenses should also be further strengthened. After sealing the letter, Misty sent someone to deliver it to the Knight Commander's residence. This would be the final battle. Once the Festival of Flora ended, everything would conclude. All treacherous officials with ulterior motives would be beheaded. The Duchy of Isgard would achieve true peace. The people could live and work in peace, recuperate, without fear of corrupt officials' extortion. The economy would prosper, flourish, without worry of roadside bandits. And their new queen could open the city gates and confidently go to welcome her dearest royal consort. Victoria Ashworth patiently folded the letter intended for Sincere, carefully sealing it in an envelope. Then she wrote the date on the envelope, opened a drawer, and placed the letter on top of an already thick stack. Since the day she left Dragon Valley, Misty had started writing a letter to Sincere every day. Day after day, month after month, it gradually became a habit. She didn't write much each day, but she wrote something daily. During travel, during battles, there was little time to write, but even a moment to jot down a line was enough. Writing just one line was good too. During the day, wielding a sword to repel enemy forces. At night, picking up a pen to record trivial matters. Writing about encountering a frog wearing a crown in a swamp while traveling. Writing about a cloud in the sky that looked very much like a chicken leg. Writing about how funny the Knight Commander looked when he tried to catch fish and fell into the river. When she met Sincere again, she would give him all the letters at once. Then he would know about these things, as if they had never been separated for so long. How strange, Misty thought then, tucking the folded paper into her breastplate. She had only known Sincere for such a short time before they parted, yet from the very first day she left Dragon Valley, she had already begun to miss him intensely. But among all the things she wrote, she never wrote about almost getting lost in the swamp, or that the Knight Commander was fishing because the army had been ambushed, their supplies cut off, besieged by the enemy for 3 days and nights, and he was so hungry he saw clouds as chicken legs. And there was one more letter, hidden in the deepest part of the drawer, a final testament written before the near-fatal decisive battle, never to be shown to him in this lifetime. Perhaps in the future, when they were both white-haired, at her funeral, someone could read it to him then. The coup, the Festival of Flora, a traditional holiday in Isgard, was the grandest day of the year for its citizens. To celebrate the Flora god's birthday for a continuous week, people wore flower wreaths, sang and danced in the squares during the day. They climbed heights, admired flowers, and offered sacrifices to pray for the Flora god's blessing. At night, every household hung flower lanterns and set off fireworks shaped like flowers. The coup began just as the fireworks bloomed. The rebel soldiers had already mingled with the returning crowds during the day and entered the royal city. They rendezvoused with Ethan and, under the cover of the exploding fireworks, stormed the palace. Everything went unexpectedly smoothly. The rebel leader was ecstatic. The new queen is indeed just a new queen, naive methods. No experience starting tonight. The Duchy of Isgard will be ours. The old conservative ministers, already aware of the plan, were stirring restlessly in their own residences. However, the moment the rebels rushed into the palace, they were captured by the royal army. Ethan Malcor was pinned to the ground by knights. Unable to accept this reality, he shrieked madly, "This is impossible. How could you know our plan?" "It was flawless, you. A mere woman, a useless waste." Misty sat on the throne, watching Ethan's ashen face below with amusement. When Ethan spewed his insults, the knight holding him down flinched, glanced at Misty, and was about to silence him. Misty waved her hand, signaling the knight to let him finish, tilting her head slightly with a somewhat ironic smile. Misty descended from the throne and walked towards Ethan, looking down at him. She smiled faintly and said lightly, "Because you are the useless waste." As for why she knew their plan, Misty sized him up like a defeated dog. This was the first time in years she had come face to face with this half-brother. She still couldn't understand why the late king had groomed such a person as his heir. Ethan heard the new queen's voice from above, light yet chilling. The queen said, "Every inch of land where the Maria roses bloom is covered by my eyes and ears." Ethan Malcor's face turned deathly white. The political landscape of the duchy underwent a major reshuffle overnight. Apart from the new queen's forces, no other power remained. At dawn on the day after the Festival of Flora ended, Misty finally finished handling all affairs. Without taking time to rest, she slung a large bundle over her shoulder, went to the stables to get her horse, and eagerly set off towards Dragon Valley. She couldn't wait to see Sincere. Sincere's perspective, my roses didn't bloom well. From the day the seeds were planted, they rooted, sprouted, climbed. Everything proceeded naturally with time. They even grew better than any flowers or grasses I had planted before. I was incredibly expectant, believing they would surely bloom more beautifully than the roses in Isgard. Every day, I crouched in the garden with a watering can, waiting for them to flower. Worried they'd lack nutrients when blooming, I even went to the flower sprites, trading acorns for fertilizer that would make flowers bloom exceptionally beautifully. I tried every method I could think of, but when it came time for them to bloom, they just didn't bloom well. I didn't understand. I had no choice but to take a jar of honey and ask Gimbal. Gimbal held the honey jar and said to me, "Sincere, perhaps I should tell you. Isgard has no winter. It's spring like all year round, warm every day, like soaking in lukewarm water. But Dragon Valley has distinct seasons, including the coldest winter in the world. It's too cold for it here, little Sincere. Your rose isn't suited to life in Dragon Valley." I froze, instinctively shifting my gaze to the rose on the table, speechless. Then Gimbal looked at me meaningfully. "But it's all right, Sincere," he said. "Dragon Valley isn't winter all year round. You don't need to rush. You should wait a bit longer. Don't jump to conclusions too early. This is Gimbal's advice to you. I should have told you sooner, but you never came to ask." Gimbal put the honey jar into the cupboard, signaling the end of our conversation. Gimbal wouldn't answer any more of my questions, even though I hadn't spoken a word besides my initial question. Yet Gimbal suddenly said, "All right, go back now, Sincere. Whatever happens, you should be on your way home." I stood up, picked up my flower, and walked to the door. I hesitated, then turned back and asked him, "Why should I be on my way home? What makes you know I should do so right now?" Gimbal smiled, stroking his beard like a fortune-teller. "Perhaps it's the arrangement of fate." I pondered his words, confused, unable to understand. But I still bid Gimbal farewell and left his house. On the road from Sunset Forest to Crystal Lake, I looked at the drooping rose in my arms. The more I looked, the sadder I felt, and a little apologetic too. I sat down by the roadside, placing it beside me. "I'm sorry. I apologized to it. I'm not a geographer. I always seem unable to keep them," I thought. Flowers, and people too. Thinking this, I couldn't control my sorrow. I slowly tilted my head back, staring wide-eyed at the silent leaves above. Then I thought, this is the last time. I won't be sad about the princess anymore. I couldn't deny it. Planting the Maria roses so eagerly in the cold early spring weather, so fervently hoping to see them bloom more beautifully than those in Isgard. It was the last shred of hidden hope I held for the princess, a self-imposed, impossible spell. It was also the final deadline I set for her, some future day when the Maria roses were lush and flourishing. Perhaps the princess would return to my side. Maybe not for long, maybe just for a day. But she had to tell me why she left without a word. Likewise, if she didn't return before the Maria roses withered, I would wait no longer. Although, in my heart, I knew the princess probably wouldn't come back. It was just a way to give myself closure. I would always remember the rose reaching into the window when I first arrived in Isgard, and always remember the beauty under the dim candlelight, whose smile didn't reach her eyes. But I had finally decided to give up on her. Even though Dragon Valley wasn't only winter and the Maria roses would eventually bloom someday, dragons have their pride too. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves. "Sha, sha." I thought I heard someone calling, "Sincere?" Startled, I turned my head. A maiden, radiant as a jewel, rode her horse into my blurred vision. It was the princess. She had come back.